In the previous installment of Profiles of the Lavender Mafia, I presented a short profile of Cardinal Coco Palmiero. Today we'll turn our focus to the late Cardinal Bernardin, who many of you may object to being profiled in this way because he's been dead for over 20 years. But in light of Dr. Taylor Marshall's astonishing interview with McCarrick survivor James Grine, who linked the modern Lavender Mafia to the St. Gallen Mafia directly, it became clear that both groups go back several decades, and few cardinals have had more enduring power even after their death than Cardinal Bernardin. So we'll start our focus here. As an aside, there have been some incredible accusations leveled against Cardinal Bernardin, but I'll save those for another time. Sufficient for now is this, that the man has been alleged to have been involved in incredible and potentially dark areas, suggesting deeds that speak to incredible evil having resided in the church in America for some time. But again, that's for another day. Joseph Louis Bernardin was ordained a priest in 1952 by Bishop John Royce Russell of Charleston, South Carolina. In 1966, he was consecrated to the position of bishop by Archbishop Paul John Hallinan of Atlanta, Georgia, with Vatican approval. Hallinan has been dubbed one of the South's foremost advocates for social and religious liberalism, which should give you an idea of the career that Bernardin himself would have. Hallinan was a civil rights advocate, which is laudable, but was also an early advocate of ecumenism, despite that practice in the modern sense having been condemned traditionally by the church. That all changed in light of the council. Hallinan elevated Bernardin to the office of Auxiliary Bishop of Atlanta, Georgia. On a final note about Hallinan, he was an influential voice at the Second Vatican Council, who advocated strongly for the use of the vernacular in the liturgy. He even went so far as to say that Sacro Sanctum Concilium, the conciliar document, condemned old liturgical ideas and opened the door to new, and I quote him directly, everything else. That's an interesting observation coming from him, given that many traditional Catholics cite Sacro Sanctum Concilium as evidence against how the Novus Ordo Missae was implemented. In February 1983, John Paul II elevated Bernardin to the rank of cardinal. He was moved to Chicago and is one of the ideological forebearers to the current Cardinal of Chicago, Blaise Cupich, friend of this channel. Current or recent bishops of the church who had been ordained priests by Bernardin include Bishop Robert Daniel Conlin, 1977, Bishop Mark Andrew Bartosik, 1994, Bishop Robert Gerald Casey, 1994, and Bishop Ronald Alden Hicks, again, 1994. He was also a co-consecrator of cardinal law. In 1983, Cardinal Bernardin was made a known public figure when his pastoral letter, The Challenge of Peace, was widely published. It is this public advocacy that birthed the now almost universally mocked phrase in American Catholicism today.
War and peace, he says, are not separate issues, but are linked in a consistent ethic of life. The metaphor he uses is a seamless garment. It is a theme he will reiterate throughout his life.
I think the most important idea he had, and it's still an incredibly important idea, is how he would talk about the seamless garment. If you care about life before birth, you got to care about people's lives after they're born.
The seamless garment isn't even an erroneous idea on a surface level. To be pro-life is to take a grand, holistic picture of the human person and their relationship in the world from birth to natural death. The problem, of course, comes in when so many Catholics will then act politically to support politicians and political proposals that appear to support life issues at the expense of defending the unborn or marriage. There may be no better example of this problem in action than when Cardinal Bernardin himself, because he was an outspoken advocate for Bay Area rights, to which the Chicago area praised him. In 1996, he was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by that well-known faithful and temperate Christian, Bill Clinton. It's this advocacy for Bay Area rights that made some begin to wonder if he was himself same-sex attracted. Let's dive into that topic because, as it turns out, most of the same-sex priests have an Episcopal lineage to Bernardin in some way. For this, we'll go to with a story from Church Militant, which had been leading the way into digging up the sordid details about the rather obvious problem that is some, not all, U.S. seminaries have. A problem that can only be described as the seminaries becoming hotbeds for the same-sex attracted. From Church Militant, Casa Jesus, gay seminary and pipeline set up by Cardinal Bernardin. This comes from September of 2018. Latin American House of Formation shut down over homosexual scandals. Casa Jesus, a now defunct Chicago seminary for Latin Americans, was founded under the late Cardinal Joseph Bernardin to recruit gay seminarians. Father John Lavers, who headed a top-level investigation at Holy Apostles Seminary in Hartford, Connecticut in 2012, confirmed with Church Militant that Bernardin led the vanguard in recruiting and funneling homosexuals from Latin America to seminaries in Chicago, some who were farmed out to other U.S. seminaries or who went on to be ordained priests for the Chicago Archdiocese. Originally a convent for nuns located right next to Holy Name Cathedral, it was turned into a formation house in 1987 under Bernardin specifically to house Latin American seminarians. After 28 years in operation, Casa Jesus was quietly shut down by Cardinal Blaise Cupich in 2016, following multiple homosexual scandals, with 3 seminarians expelled after being caught going to a gay bar, and the rector himself, Octavio Munoz, arrested for male child porn on his laptop. When I was at Casa Jesus, I used to go to gay bars, bring my friends. They didn't say anything, said former seminarian Luis Stalin to NBC Chicago. Stalin said the rule for celibacy was often ignored. Another Casa Jesus graduate, Father Diego Barrio, was arrested just this week for engaging in gay sex in public view in Miami, Florida. Barrio is a canon lawyer and served on the marriage tribunal for the Chicago Archdiocese and is pastor of San Juan Diego Mission in Arlington Heights, a parish linked to another Latin American priest busted for child porn in 2015. The man arrested with Barrio, Father Edwin Geraldo Cortez, is an externed priest from Colombia, assigned to St. Aloysius Parish in Chicago. Church Militant spoke with a priest who was a former seminarian at Casa Jesus in the early 2000s alongside Barrio, who confirmed that Barrio's homosexuality was an open secret at the time. The rector knew. Everybody knew, said the priest, who asked to remain anonymous out of concerns for retribution. At the time, then Father Robert Casey, just named an auxiliary bishop for Chicago in July, was rector of Casa Jesus, which he led from 1998 to 2003. He mingled with the bad people, the priest said of Barrio. Father Marco Mercado was a good friend of his, a very good friend of his. Mercado also came to Chicago via Casa Jesus, and was later suspended from ministry for homosexual misconduct. Cardinal Cupich removed him as pastor at Shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe in Des Plaines in 2015 for an inappropriate relationship with an adult male. Mercado eventually relocated to San Antonio, Texas, under Archbishop Gustavo Garcia Siller, auxiliary bishop in Chicago, before going to Texas. Do you see how this network works? The worst scandal suffered by Casa Jesus, and which led to its closure, was the arrest and conviction of its rector, Octavio Munoz, in 2015 for child porn found on his computer. He helped lead the House of Formation from 2009 to 2015, during which he frequently traveled to Latin America to recruit more seminarians for the Chicago Gay House of Seminarians. Cupich was criticized for dragging his feet on the Munoz investigation, failing to report him immediately to law enforcement, waiting a month before removing him from ministry, and sending him to the notorious St. Luke Institute in Maryland for treatment without informing law enforcement. The former CEO of St. Luke, Father Edward J. Arsenault, was arrested and jailed in 2014 for embezzling more than $200,000 from the diocese to use on his homosexual partners. Cupich's actions drew a sharp rebuke from the judge overseeing Munoz's case. Isn't there counseling in the state of Illinois that he could have been afforded, asked Judge Maria Curicos Cecil during a court hearing in 2016. A 2016 bond proffer gave the background on the Munoz case. On or about 7/7/2015, an employee of the Archdiocese of Chicago was scheduled to show the new Casa Jesus rector the apartment. The Archdiocese employee and the new rector, Father Kevin Hayes, knocked on the door to the apartment, and when there was no answer, the employee tried the handle but found the door locked. The employee used the master key to enter the apartment. The employee also observed a recliner chair with a TV tray, and on the TV tray was an open computer, powered on, and it was running. The employee saw that the computer was a black Sony laptop, on which there was displayed a moving image on the screen that appeared to be running from a webcam. The image was of a young boy who had no pubic hair masturbating. Defendant was not present in the apartment at the time. Both the employee and the rector left the apartment. Now that's a charming name for a gay seminary, right? Casa Jesus, or Jesus' house. But it gets better. Recall the story of Father Paul Kalchik, who has since gone into hiding after members of his parish burned that so-called pride flag. This picture clearly shows Cardinal Bernardin himself presiding over the inaugural Mass for the parish back in the post-conciliar crazy years of the 1970s, when the spirit of Vatican II was flying in its fullest effect. That inaugural Mass was very gay-friendly, as you can tell by that photograph. Some of us don't think it's a coincidence in the slightest that the scourge of Bay Area seminarians began in earnest at that time either. If your parish or a parish near you has a priest from South or Central America that sets off alarm bells in your head about his possible sexual orientation, that priest may have been brought to the U.S. by the network that Bernardin himself helped set up. Bringing in these kind of seminarians into the U.S., of course, has led to further problems, including exacerbating an already explosive abuse crisis among the clergy that was starting to rear its head in the 1980s, an abuse crisis that Bernardin has himself been implicated in. Bernardin has been accused of participating in the systematic cover-up of abusive priests. This news clip comes from about a year ago, before the current crisis blew up in the open.
Now, the Archdiocese of Chicago releases thousands of documents, many of which show Cardinal Joseph Bernardin protected accused pedophile priests. In all, the Archdiocese released 6,000 documents detailing how it dealt with 30 priests suspected of child abuse over 40 years. In one case, documents show Cardinal Bernardin, who served as Cincinnati's archbishop for 10 years, knew of multiple complaints about a priest, but allowed him to continue serving in a parish. Other documents show the diocese hushed up charges made against priests.
They reflect a systematic, ongoing, decade-long, continuous pattern of conscious choices by top officials of the Archdiocese, from Cardinal Cody to Bernardin to Cardinal George.
The Archdiocese released the documents to lawyers for the victims last week, then published them online today, as well as an apology. It states in part, quote, the Archdiocese acknowledges that its leaders made some decisions decades ago that are now difficult to justify.
We've long since learned that the Church in America, or more accurately, the bishops, were systematically covering up the abusers by shuttling them around various parishes in their dioceses, and as communications improved, to various dioceses around the country. If the cover-up was truly systematic, as in several bishops working together, then the participation of Bernardin makes absolute sense. He was essentially America's cardinal. In researching this video, I watched old newscasts from the time of his death, and he was painted by the media as an American saint. But he has been tied directly to the pipeline of predators coming into the U.S. from South America. Why then would it be surprising that he covered things up? As an aside, the only details we have about Bernardin being a homosexual himself come from those who spend time in Rome in ecclesial circles, where it's said to be well known that he was same-sex attracted. In other words, rumors. Though most infamously the Rite of Sodomy, that notorious book, that also lists Worrell, McCarrick, and others as Sodom medical prelates, also lists Bernardin among their number. Was Bernardin himself an abuser? In 1993, a former seminarian, Stephen Cook, accused Bernardin of abusing him, saying that the memories had been repressed but brought out in hypnotic therapy sessions. He provided circumstantial evidence that showed the two had known each other to some degree. The case was dismissed in court, to which Cook later apologized. Bernardin charged Cook with having been pushed into making the accusations against him by an interesting priest, Father Charles Fiore of Wisconsin, who had been working with the murdered Father Coons on his investigations into Satanism and pedophilia among the Catholic clergy. Recall that Father Coons was also an associate of Malachi Martin and Father John Hardin. Was Cook's case actually legitimate? I haven't been able to find anything about Stephen Cook in the media, online, or anywhere, other than that one story. And he would now be almost 60 years old. But his connection with Father Fiore and Father Coons are interesting, to say the least. So what are Bernardin's direct links to the Theodore McCarrick? Aside from his running in the same Bay Area circles as McCarrick, Few on the surface. But remember that it is that phrase, the seamless garment, that runs through this sordid affair. It is a positive-sounding phrase that has enabled the secularization of the faith in the West. It's a favorite of Pope Francis and has been a favorite of others who are known to have been in the St. Gallen Mafia, including McCarrick and Daniels. While I've not seen Cardinal Cupich use the phrase himself, he frequently uses language that calls to mind the seamless garment. The bigger priorities of the Pope being immigration reform and global warming, instead of addressing Vigano's allegations, as one example. McCarrick ran in the elite circles of the hierarchy in the U.S. and in Europe well before his elevation to the College of Cardinals. He certainly knew Bernardin, and his consecrator, the late Cardinal Spellman, certainly did as well. I am of the mind that we can safely put McCarrick and Bernardin in the same club, if informally. The maintenance of the same-sex pipeline into U.S. seminaries, which had landing locations in various seminaries around the U.S., speaks to this relationship. If you like videos like this, like and share this video and subscribe, and click the notification bell below. If you're interested in supporting my work, there are various options below, along with links to my Twitter, the Sources blog, and the Return to Tradition Facebook page. Thanks for listening. I'm Anthony Stein. Ave Maria.